Start. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready, probably. You got your pillow? You need another one?
No, I'm good.
Need a pillow? You need a pillow? I feel like I'm kind of like, I know I felt like, hey, ladies, get away. From me.
But I feel like this couch is very sinkable.
It,
I
you
think
kind of
we
sink in it,
officially need a
right?
new couch.
Oh, I remember when you and I bought this couch.
No, with me, Erica.
I was with you. It's a long time ago.
It's on memory lane. But like, look at this.
Yeah, there's a lot of
and getting out of this. You're like,
oh,
this is not happening.
we need a new couch.
Hey, keep your eyes out.
Let's go on Nellis auction. Our clients have been telling us about Nellis auction. Have you been on there? I looked on there for some singing bowls. They had a set of 7. It was brand new at the time, $49.
Is that good?
Yeah, because retail price is $350.
I think I paid $600 for mine.
And they were like the gradient. They were the gradient ones. So the color for the chakras.
For those
the
of
bottom.
you out there who don't know what singing bowls are, Google it. Just Google it.
Yeah. They're amazing. $600.
$600. What's the matter with
back
you?
in the day? Because I've
Yeah.
had them for a while. And like anything, when something comes out, it's not quite as accessible. So you pay
You know,
more for it. Yeah. So, right now.
All right. Welcome to Delivered. We are delivering mothers, midwives, and magic. I'm Jasmine.
I'm Sherry.
I'm Erica.
Welcome. Welcome. Today we are talking about the A word.
Seriously.
The A word. Access. That's what we're talking. That's the A word.
Access. Access.
That's the
Yes.
A word. that we're talking-
That's all we have to say. We're done.
Access to care and reproductive rights. It's a hot topic right now, especially in our political climate. Being a person who has female reproductive organs, thinking about my future is scary. Thinking about having autonomy over our body. In our last episode, we talked a lot about autonomy and what that looks like for people who have female reproductive organs. And so being in that space, it does feel scary. And so even access to regular old care, whether that's obstetrics, having access to that is the scary topic to talk about right now. So I'm glad we're talking about it. I think I was telling Erica earlier, in this delivered space, we get to talk about hard stuff. We get to have these conversations because people want to have them. Sometimes we're in spaces where we can't always have them. If we can bring that to people, I love that we can do that.
It's hard because it's so polarizing. And it shows up for me a little bit like when we recorded last week's video, we did talk a little bit about abortion and access to healthcare. My husband, who edits the video, was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of polarizing. This is kind of like a topic. Oh, don't talk about scary stuff. Well, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Is
Yeah.
bringing things into the light
Yeah.
because things are less scary when they're in the light. If we keep it in the dark, it's scary in the dark.
The
And-
unknown is
Sorry.
scary. If you're unfamiliar or uneducated about something, it's terrifying until you learn. And then even if you learn, it might still be something that's scary, but at least you have information. So you're better equipped to make more educated decisions.
You're empowered.
I
Yes,
felt
that's
like
what it's
there were
for.
2 parts. I think we were going to each share a personal story. I looked up the laws in Nevada, so I think that's really helpful to know what the laws are here and what the climate is in any state that you live in, because now it is just 100% up to the state. And so knowing what those are. And the other piece to that is this whole, like, it's just such a political divisive topic. Either you're pro-life or you're pro-abortion. And the truth is, I feel like that's unfair language. I'm pro-life always, but do I think women deserve access to body autonomy and care? And so I think the second part of this is that we do have to talk about how much do our personal belief systems, whether it be religious or science, or how much of that is important in your care provider, and how much do you divulge to your caregivers about personal belief system? I think that's what we're talking about. Would you agree?
I think that's really important. I definitely think that's a big piece of it. Because if you don't feel comfortable talking to let's just say your GP, but let's take midwives and OBs out of the equation.
Okay.
Let's say you're at your GP and you're just getting your yearly physical. If you don't feel comfortable sharing with that provider, and I'm going to use cannabis as an example, okay? Because recently it's become legalized, but once upon a time, it wasn't legal. You'd go in and they would, do you smoke? Do I smoke? I would be that patient who would be like, you need to differentiate. Like, smoke what? And, well, smoke cigarettes. No, I don't smoke cigarettes. I quit. I used to, but I don't anymore. Do you drink? Do you take narcotics? It wasn't do you take drugs, it was do you take narcotics? Well, in my head, cannabis isn't really a narcotic. Like,
It's a plant.
it's a plant, right? It grows. It's a plant. Much like the poppy is a plant and the coca leaf is a plant. So plant medicine, right? But I think there's a stigma, to be honest, with your care provider because of judgment.
Well, it goes on your permanent record.
Get rid of that permanent record crap, please. We are not in 6th grade. We are not going to the principal's office.
It does go on your permanent record. Erica, I went on antidepressants during my apprenticeship. It attached to my record, and you know who found out about it? My
No.
life insurance policy. And then they raised my life insurance because now I'm considered a mental health risk.
No.
Your insurance companies, they look at what
Well,
you're
and
on,
especially
they
now.
look at what you admit to. If it's an illegal substance, I want to say to my care provider, these are truly what I'm doing because I want the best care. And if things collide or clash, but the truth is I also don't want to implicate myself in a situation that becomes a liability or affects me. So yeah, I do think there's
That goes back to HIPAA laws, because all insurance needs to know is you went to the doctor and saw a physician. They don't need to know the medications you're on unless you're getting
You
medications
apply
filled.
for life insurance?
No.
They ask what
Yeah.
physicians you've seen.
Yeah.
Because you can nullify your life insurance. If you don't disclose something to your life insurance, they could use it as an excuse to not pay out.
This is probably why I don't have health insurance.
How honest do we be with our caregiver to get the best care? But in our society, because we've said these drugs are good, these drugs are bad, this surgery is good, this surgery is
Well,
bad.
and now I recently had a conversation with an insurance company for a family member. If you're on antidepressants or anxiety medication, they may not cover it anymore. I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean you're not going to cover it? Well, we're covering it now, but because of our new administration, they're changing a lot of the laws and what can be covered. There's a reason why that United Healthcare guy was shot, because he was shot by somebody whose benefits were affected, and it affected a family member. And I don't know if the family member passed or was in the hospital, but you're messing with people's lives. Who cares what drugs they're taking?
Well, I even think about the kids in school. If your kid is on like Adderall or Ritalin or any behavioral things or have been diagnosed with anything, they can't get into the military. What? Facts. Because Ethan had a diagnosis of ADHD, they wouldn't take him for the military. Everyone in my family has some version of ADHD. We're all on the spectrum. That's how I think. We all are.
I feel like everybody is on the
But
spectrum.
do I think that
that's what makes it
fair?
a spectrum, right?
Because in my brain, just like that client that came to the office who was on antidepressants and our husband is trying to get full custody, saying you're irresponsible because you're on this medication. And she's over here going, no, me being on this medication is me being responsible.
Yeah.
But that's not how the court system's viewing it right now. They're saying, oh, she is not stable because she has to be on medication. So I think that does affect us. I think that, and we already know more women are diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And so they're more highly medicated, and that follows you around, man.
Mhm. I would agree with that.
It doesn't go anywhere. Your medical record's not going anywhere.
I guess I just hate that term, your permanent record, because you hear
I
that when
agree.
you're a kid, but like,
I agree.
and it bothers me. I just had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine, a former job of hers. She was speaking to the former HR person. This is actually something for everybody who does watch this to take note of. Beware of your HR people. There is no regard to HIPAA in a human resources office. If something comes across their desk and it's gossip worthy, they talk about it. Case in point, she no longer works for this company, but the HR person was telling her about stuff that he should not have been privy to, but half a dozen other people who still work in the office. She actually said to him, you know this is a HIPAA violation. I think it's a problem across the board.
Right.
So we've totally deviated from the topic.
But I think But it's important to talk about this worry about access to care. So let's talk a little bit about the state of Nevada and our
Yeah,
regulations.
go back to your statistics.
So
No.
our go back to your statistics. I'm going to sit here and drink my little pomegranate juice.
Shut up.
You can have an abortion up to 24 weeks. And we've even in 2019 made it so that it was not a criminal offense for a physician to treat someone up to 11 weeks. This last voting session, we voted to decriminalize it for a longer period of time, and that passed. And so in this state, even in the language after 24 weeks, it has a caveat for saying even after 24 weeks, if there's a medical reason that we can justify. Now, I think the big shocking thing is like Medicaid doesn't cover them at all.
No.
Unless it is in the case of rape, incest, or mother's life.
And you have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I've heard that they're
Getting a physician to sign off on
Yeah.
that is really hard.
yeah.
So at least in the state of Nevada,
There are some
There's
benefits
access.
to having Medicaid. I think it's like half off. It's not covering it all
like
the
the
way.
company might offer a discount for Medicaid.
Yeah, and there's different grants and stuff out there. And so you have to call people and get access to that, but it's not fully covered. You're right.
But I think Nevada's doing well in that arena as far as access. I already worry that I talk too much. I'm just going to share my one story. I had a client, and at the time, she wasn't sure if she wanted a diagnostic ultrasound. So she wasn't sure. She was really going back and forth between whether she wanted to expose the baby to ultrasound technology. She decided eventually to go in. And when she went in for that 20-week scan, it was closer to 23 or 22 weeks. When she went in, the baby had tons of problems. And I know they can be wrong, right? And I know that you have a right to believe in miracles and divine intervention and whatever you believe. But this particular family was like, I don't want my daughter to have lack of quality of life. I don't want to watch her go through the birth thing. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to watch that happen.
Mhm.
Okay. And I feel like as an autonomous human being, that's a decision the couple has. And she had had a prior child in previous marriage. This was the new marriage. So his first baby. They wanted this baby when this diagnosis showed up. The place we were sending her for ultrasounds and the physicians working with us, because it took so long to get the diagnoses back and get that by the time they could do anything, it was past 24 weeks, closer to 26. I couldn't find anybody here to do it, even calling in favors. But the climate was kind of hot at the time because this was several years back. And so it was shocking. It was crazy experience because we ended up calling around to see what state she could go to. She ended up going to New Mexico. Her and her partner flew out. Like, her partner wasn't allowed in the room. There was like 6 other people in there. There was like curtains. Like, there was like, oh my gosh, I can't even visualize these poor humans going through this loss and this all like sharing space, not able to emotionally grasp. And so they called me throughout the whole process. They gave the medication. She called me when the baby's heart rate stopped. I make sure she receives the care she needs when she comes home. She goes to this clinic, calls me, gets on a plane, heads back. And what do? I call the hospital, call and said, hey, I just had a client come to the office. There's not a heartbeat. Can she come in? And they had to process that. I thought, how traumatic was the event in and of itself, but the fact that she didn't have access to get the care that she needed and deserved, because I felt like that was her choice. And I know a lot of people kind of go, she should have had faith in this or this. And in my brain, I just think,
though,
why do we need people to think like us?
I'm going to look at the medical side of it. I had a similar experience with a client. I was a brand spanking new midwife, so probably 10, 12 years ago. The ultrasound showed all of these issues. So making that family jump through hoops to terminate what is truly a non-viable pregnancy is egregious to me. It never should have had to have been like that. She should not have to have gone out of state, had that pregnancy terminated, only to come back here to have her baby birthed here.
That doesn't make sense. But I guess the piece for me that doesn't fit is I know that the argument would be like, well, you don't know. We've seen ultrasound technology misdiagnose and mistreat and seen a healthy baby born. So then you have that other group of people going, put your faith in that a miracle will happen. And I think that's the piece we're talking about, because
I agree with you.
Not
everybody is going to agree with that.
We have to accept that if she doesn't believe in a miracle,
That's okay. Like,
That's okay.
You can't remove her right
No,
to do
yeah.
and that's just it. It was
right?
their choice. I know that with the clients I had, it was their third baby, and she really didn't want to get a scan. Like, she was like, "Do I have to get an anatomy scan? Do I have to do it? I know everything is fine." And I was like, "Look, I just really want to know where your placenta is. I just need to know where your placenta is." And then I remember getting a phone call from the sonographer, and that's never
Yeah, they just send a report over.
yeah, when the sonographer
Right.
calls you, I remember my stomach dropped. I'm like, "Oh, this is not good." And this baby was basically completely malformed. And because it wasn't considered a medical emergency, her OB wouldn't perform the procedure. So we went to a clinic because it was about 19, 20 weeks. So we went to a clinic and I went with her and her doula went with her. I don't know if any of you out there have ever been inside an abortion clinic. But the waiting area is quiet. The only thing you can hear are tears and sobs. There is no one in there having a party saying, "Terminating pregnancy today. Woo!" Nobody. Do not judge a woman making choices about her body until you have walked a mile in her shoes, because you have no idea what is bringing the woman to that decision to terminate that pregnancy. Like with my client, it was a malformed baby. With Sherry's client, it was more malformations. But then again, you have the young woman who's probably 14 or 15 who was raped by her uncle and she's getting an abortion. So you can't judge on why people are there.
But it's none of your
It's none of your
business.
business.
It's not
Exact your business. I will say that the clinic here in Las Vegas we went to was really great. The clients don't come back into the waiting room. They go out a different exit, I should say. And I remember I got her into her car with her husband and her doula, and I went back into the clinic. The girl at the desk is like, "Did you forget something?" I said, "No, I just wanted to thank you." She looked at me. She was like, "Thank us?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Because I'm a midwife. I bring life into this world. You people do something every day that is incredibly controversial, and I'm sure you never get thanked." And the doctor came out. It was a woman. She came out from the back, and I thanked her. I said, "Thank you for showing care and compassion to these women who come in here because they deserve it. They're making probably one of the hardest decisions they're ever going to make." I terminated a pregnancy when I was 20. I remember it was like Thanksgiving, Christmas, it was the holiday season. And I remember walking into the clinic and some man dressed in a Santa suit told me I was going to burn in hell because I was murdering my baby. And my New York attitude looked at him and said, "So you going to be giving me diapers? Are you going to be paying for baby clothes? Are you going to be paying for formula? Because if you're not, mind your own business." And I walked in. But that is what women have to deal with.
Sorry that you haven't.
But I'm
Are
the
you
one in
making
three.
this then you're having to defend it? Are you kidding me right now? You have to explain yourself to someone? I don't, unless you're your partner, right? I
Well, it's
don't
funny, my partner
understand.
was with me and I thought he was going to get arrested because
He was mad.
he got all up in this guy's face. And after I said, "Sorry, I'm going to end up paying for that." But
They're rolling in dough, you guys.
rolling in dough.
Rolling in
But I
swear
think
jar
in
dough.
all of the abortion clinics I've sit in, and the things that stand out to me is the, like you said, the solemnness, right?
You're a pin drop.
The other thing too is you have to have a ride home here in Nevada. Your ride has to be there and they have to sign something.
And you can't take a cab.
And
You
so
can't take
talking
a
about,
lift.
and I remember one of the times I was there, a woman had come in and they said, "We need to have proof that your ride's here." And she said, "Well, my husband's out in the car. All my kids are out there and I really don't want to bring them inside." And they said, "He has to come sign this paper." And so had to lug all of their cute little kids in. I remember just thinking, look at all the different people that are sitting here in this waiting room. So many different humans that you would stereotype to be all different walks of life.
Socioeconomic.
Assumptions.
Yes, it's amazing.
I've sat with women in my consulted and told them about the risks, the cons, and held space for them and cried and wept with them while they made this hard choice. And so I guess when you share that with me, which I find so brave, thank you for sharing that.
Well, that's what the space is for.
And to say, not only did I have to make this really hard decision because I couldn't give my child the life, I wasn't even able to take care of myself for whatever the reason was. And then you go in and you go, I have to explain myself to some guy who knows nothing about your life, let alone what it feels like to be a woman and carry that weight and that responsibility.
The thing that's so twisted is that there he was dressed up as Santa. That takes some twisted individual. Like, that's weird and whatever. As midwives, we bring life into the world. Like, all three of us bring life into the world. That doesn't mean that we're all right to lifers. Okay. I know I'm not.
If you think they're wrong, don't get one. If it's what saves your life, because I've seen it. I've seen people hit that bottom and make hard decisions and turn their life around. And if they had proceeded with the pregnancy, you don't know what that future is. And I think that's why we have to trust women in general to know enough about what they are capable of doing and that is a boundary, right?
I just had a well, this is a while ago. I want to say this was probably a couple of months ago. But I had a conversation with one of my girlfriends. At the time, she was 15. She just turned 16. And she had disappeared for an entire afternoon. They got out of school early, and she disappeared for an entire afternoon. So I finally caught up with this kid. I'm like, where have you been? Who have you been talking to? What have you been doing? And she was like, what's with the third degree? And I was like, listen, kid, if you were my daughter, this would be nothing. This would be just a daily conversation. This is not the third degree. But you weren't answering your phone. And here's the unfortunate thing. Now that we all have phones, hell, we didn't even have pagers when I was a teenager. So if we were gone and out, unless we called, our parents did not know where we were. Okay. And there was no getting in touch with us. Thank God for the 70s and 80s. That's all I can say.
I remember being in a movie theater watching a movie and having to leave to go use the payphone to check on the babysitter. That's how old I am. Using a payphone and being like, hey, how are the kids doing?
I used to keep dimes in my penny purse, so I always had a dime for the phone.
They were quarters. It was quarters when I did it.
Not when I was a teenager.
I remember seeing the dime, and then I don't think I saw a nickel on there, but you know what coins you could use? Definitely a quarter though.
I remember picking up the phone, like, what number, please? Kingsbridge 94423. I also remember be like, call the jitney. And my little boy, someone does jitney service.
You're like talking a foreign language. I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's cab company.
Okay, yeah,
It's for some reason in the Bronx, cabs were called jitneys. I don't know why. It's a very British term,
now I know.
which is weird because we're all
Now I
Jewish.
know.
So I don't know where that came from. But yeah, it was a whole different thing. But there was no communication. Now there's communication everywhere. And there was a point to what I was saying, and now I don't remember what it was.
You had this friend who you were trying to see where she was at, and she was like, what's up? Why you
You
pressing
couldn't
me?
find her. She left that afternoon.
Okay. I still lost my train of thought. It's fine. I'll pick it up.
I think just coming back to this space of having access and what that looks like now. Thank you for sharing the statistics around Nevada. I think now is just a scary time. I know that we want the laws to be state specific. I think that's going to continue. I don't think we're going to have a national, federal law that
We
says
don't criminalize it.
I don't think we're ever going to
feel
have
like
that.
should happen. I know Planned Parenthood, not perfect. They're not perfect organizations and we could do better. I just don't know why we got rid of Roe v. Wade without having a safety net, creating something that was a better federal system that said, hey, physicians don't go to jail for prescribing or doing surgeries that are within their scope of practice.
Right.
And so how is that not like something that physicians should be protected on like a federal level? Shouldn't we? I mean, isn't the law there to protect us if you believe in law? It shouldn't be criminal. People shouldn't have to go to jail. We're going to fill our jail systems with more women who don't have resources. So they're there for freaking domestic violence or whatever. Now we're going to start putting people in jail because
I think I've been, there's all of these crazy theories are online, and it's talking about how like assisting in even driving someone to a clinic and having this happen. It's going to be outlawed.
I read that.
It's just online, just stuff
okay.
online.
Yeah, I
right?
read
It's
that.
about,
I'm like,
that's kind of crazy,
I feel like we have to be protected for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I thought the most powerful thing you said in the last video recorded was, it's just humans who didn't need it. And so again, it goes to like communities where you kind of, if you didn't need it and it didn't affect you, I don't know why you have an opinion about it.
Why does it matter to you?
Like, how does this affect your life?
It doesn't.
But then that comes down to the fact that it's about wanting people to believe how you believe. And it doesn't work. Nobody is believing the same thing. And it's okay for two things to be true.
Both these. And even if one is right or wrong, I think humans deserve the right to choose what they think is best, even if it's not in their best interest.
But also, let's not forget that you walk into a doctor's office and they look at you and they will judge a book by its cover. Once upon a time, you walking into an OB's office or a GP's office with all of your piercings and all of your tattoos, what do you think they're going to think? Oh, she's stupid. She's uneducated. The ink on her arm is probably worth more than the car you're driving. Do you understand what you see what I'm saying?
What you're
Is that
saying.
it's preconceived notions on what a person is.
To me, I was talking to my daughter last night. It was her wife's birthday, so we went to Dave & Buster's and played games. We were talking about high school life. My first two children graduated from high school that a lot of drugs were ran through. It's a nicer neighborhood, a nicer high school. They
Oh,
have
I know
lots
it,
of
yeah.
fun. Cocaine is rampant.
Kids always have the best drugs.
So another part of town, because I wanted my children not to be in that crowd. I wanted them to have diversity. I wanted them to not be exposed to, like, if I don't make this much money, I'm whatever. At that school, I was talking to Anna last night. She goes, no one did coke there. We all did pot. So then you'd be talking to someone from the other school and they're all hoity-toity and judgmental of us being stoners, but they're putting stuff up their nose because they have the money to do it. So we look at and go, acceptable because the money, so the class system matters. So for those of us in the middle class or lower, yeah, we're the peons in society. Where what we do when a light is shined on it, it's bad. But when they do it, it's acceptable.
Cocaine was a white collar drug. Cocaine was a designer drug. True story. When I was in high school, it was 1980. The proctors and prefects in the dorms were running around with hefty bags, making everybody dump their illegal drugs, alcohol, paraphernalia in the bags. Why? Because a rumor was circulating that they were going to do a room search. Now, valiantly, our proctors and prefects tried. People were caught. People were suspended. Some people were even expelled. Not that that really matters when you get expelled from prep school, because you just go to another prep school.
Really?
They're
No,
not
yeah.
giving them lockers now. She said they're there. The kids don't have access. And so I'm thinking they don't want places for kids to store
hide
stuff or hide.
My kids have to have see-through backpacks.
Yep. That's a new one.
They have transparent backpacks. And that's the rule at their school. Like, if you come in with a regular JanSport, no. That's
Do you know that the high school in my town was the very first high school in the United States to have metal detectors installed in 1977? That is how bad the school was. 1977. That's a long time ago.
So looking at this idea that people have money are doing the same thing.
They're
And I don't know
worse.
why we're talking about
It's worse.
in marginalized communities, because there are people who are just doing it and they have access to care. It's more secretive. They have resources that nobody knows what they're doing, right?
Do you know what young women are doing in New York City? I got this from my kid. They're stocking up on Plan B.
I heard that.
My daughter
How long is
probably
the
had
expiration on that?
100 doses of
An
it.
organization in Vegas is also passing it out. I had to get it for a client the other day. Previous client who was like, I don't
We
have
should pick
access to this. And I got the organization card.
Think about what you
But
just
yeah,
she doesn't have access to it. Why?
she doesn't even have access to get to where she can buy it, let alone having the
See,
50
this
bucks
is the
for it.
problem.
And then there are restrictions on, not restrictions, but if you're over 185, you have to do 2 doses. It's not effective. So you have to take 2. So if you don't have $100, you can't protect yourself in this way. Access is the word, right?
Yep.
Access is the word, and it is about class. I think it has a lot to do with class, because you're right.
Mhm.
People,
Yeah,
whether
the
it's
misunderstanding.
drugs,
A lack of knowledge. Maybe even Because I think when I was a stay-at-home mom in the religion that I was in, you really did kind of exist in a bubble, you know? You surrounded yourself with people who are like, and it really, when I opened Well Run Mama in 2006, and all of a sudden I started meeting different humans doing different things, it changed my life. I think it saved my life, essentially, until I left that stay-at-home bubble where I was telling myself this other stuff didn't affect me. It didn't reach me because, like you said, until I needed it, right? There have been humans in my life that have needed it and that holding space for them while they've gone through it. And the shame that comes.
That's it. That's the shame, right? When you think about shame, it's like, well, how do we remove this shame around anything, whether that's your reproductive parts, like knowing what's going on down there, education, right? In order to remove that shame, you destigmatize it by giving information. A lot of the time, it's sex, it's things that have to do with your body. It's like, no, we don't talk about that. We're just not talking about that. And then it's like, well, damn, how am I supposed to know what's going on if we're not talking about that?
Right.
You know, removing the stigma from these things that are really natural. And then I think it allows empowerment for if we do need access to this other space.
And I think if you know what your options are and you know what this might lead to, the more information you have. Adam and I are rewatching Orange is the New Black. And last night we watched the episode where all of a sudden they discover that your pee doesn't come out your vagina. Oh, the 3-hole.
Uh-huh.
It says 4 if you count your butt, but
Yeah.
right. But anyway, a cute hairdresser
Is the one who's telling everybody.
Yeah.
Do you not know
because
you're
she had
going
to
in there?
design hers, right? So he does like a whole drawing and you watch everybody kind of coming around the corner. Even the security guy comes over and he's like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh. And so these girls are like, oh my gosh. And you laugh, you see it and you laugh. And my husband sees it and goes, there's no, and I went, fact, that's fact.
That's
right?
facts right there.
The things we don't talk about, how do we know? And then if we shame people from touching themselves, there's no exploration.
Or even
happening.
looking down there to see them, even with the mirror. Everybody's at the mirror.
How old I was when I looked at mine for the first time.
Tomatoes?
With 2 children.
Like,
Yes.
and it's like, okay, let's check out a woman. And it's like, I'm going to need some help with my girdle.
That's funny because the instructor to that is in Orange is the New Black.
Is she?
She's yoga. She's Yoga Joe.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, she's your. Okay.
Yeah.
Patty
But-
mayonnaise from Doug.
Is that? Oh my God.
Patty mayonnaise.
I love patty mayonnaise.
That's I don't even know what you guys are
That's
talking
her.
about. The Nickelodeon show Doug.
I'm sure my children
I love Doug.
But
Yoga Jones is.
I think that's it. Knowledge is power. I think we've intentionally withheld knowledge from young women because we don't want them to be autonomous and make their own choices and decisions.
So I'm going to touch for a minute on our next episode, which is going to be about teen pregnancy. I had a teenager recently, super adorable, super cute, super knew nothing about her body.
Yeah.
So I felt like every prenatal was sex ed. Like
Yeah.
every single prenatal, we would talk about a different part of
What
the
made her
body.
come to you?
Her parents called me. And funny, I met the mom, I think, once at the beginning of the pregnancy, but her dad, who was amazing, brought her to every appointment. Usually her younger sister would come. I think her younger sister came because they wanted to make sure that she did not make the same mistake her older sister made. It was interesting because every appointment was anatomy and
You get to be a safe space for them to ask questions about things that make us uncomfortable.
And to
Oh,
not
she
feel
had this
stupid
cute
about it.
boyfriend who was not the father of the baby, but he was very involved. And it
Oh.
was interesting the questions he would ask. And I remember we were at a postpartum and I was at their house and, because she obviously still lives with her parents. And he was asking me, well, how often should the baby be eating? And he was asking me, like, does this baby poop look normal? And I'm thinking, how old are you? Because I don't have dads who were twice your age asking all of these questions and seeking knowledge. But we're going to talk more about this in another episode. But she knew nothing about
You know
anatomy.
what? When you say that in my brain, I think that's what I would tell youth is stay curious. And as adults, stay curious. My therapist said that to me all the time. sometimes if I say something and I know it's not the best thing for me to say, she'll be like, let's just be curious about that. I'll think, okay,
No, I'm never gonna not think about this again.
I'll be curious. But isn't that it though? That innocent,
Yeah.
that, because I think there's a difference between naivety and empowerment, right? Like, and naivety gets us in trouble, but if you have knowledge, then you can make your best life choices. And sometimes I think humans get put into situations to not make their best life choices because they didn't have all the information and resources. And so nobody had a conversation.
Well,
Yeah.
you said something about that last week. Like, if you make a decision based on the pieces you had,
Yeah.
but then you find out that there's another big piece, and you're like,
Damn,
oh, wait a minute, I
Yeah.
would have made a different
Yeah.
decision. So I think that's important to remember that
It is.
you've got to have all of the information to make the best possible decision.
But why isn't that so well known? Because I was raised by my great grandmother. My mother was 15 when I was born, and like fresh 15. Our birthdays are 6 days apart. I'm growing up, and religion ties into it as well. I'm growing up, and I've been shaped like this my whole life, right? Like I'm curvy and stuff, and it's just like, don't have sex because of religion. Don't have sex. Don't have sex. Don't have abstinence. Don't have sex. I would have loved her to say, when you have sex, there's so much more than just getting pregnant. There's so much more than just because it's a sin. There's emotions.
That's a
There's
big
a
one.
spiritual connection that you want to have. There's STIs. There was no information. It was just like, don't do it. And if you do it, you're probably going to hell. And I'm like, well, damn. Oh,
But
okay.
then there's that drawing
I'm
the
a
line
teenage
in the
human
sand.
who's curious.
Yeah. And that, I mean, you not giving me the information just makes me want to do it more. Like, what am I missing out on? If grown people can do this and I'm not supposed to do this just because I'm not married, like,
Why?
and I went digging. Like, I had sex. I was a teenager for sure. I wasn't
Emotionally ready,
Okay.
psychologically
At all.
ready.
And the shame around it is that when my grandmother did find out that I was sexually active, she was like, you had sex? And I'm like, oh shit, like, what did I do? What did I do? That didn't stop me from doing it. But it was just like, she was so disappointed and
And you
I had to
know
deal with
why?
so much. Yeah.
Why? I remember with my kids, it was always just be safe.
Yeah. That's the
That's
talk I
how it
want
was
to
for me.
give.
I know you're going to do it. Can I
Use
buy you
these condoms.
Like, can I
Use
buy you
this birth
condoms?
See,
control.
I wasn't taught to advocate for self because I raised in a home where you were a people pleaser. I remember there being times I was definitely sexually active throughout my teenage years, and times you'd hook up and be like, "Do you have a condom?" And the guy'd be like, "I don't need a condom," and we'd be like, "Oh, okay." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to ruffle feathers. You were a people
Lessons
pleaser.
that I saw all of my friends
In adulthood.
Me and my friend Kate were probably the only ones in high school who actually graduated without having sex. But I saw half a dozen pregnancy scares. I also volunteered at the maternity center in New York, so I was pretty familiar with pregnancy and how you got pregnant. That's why I couldn't understand. Like, I'm not doing that because y'all are stupid and boys are stupid and boys will use, they still do, I'm sure. If you loved me, you would. Well, guess what? I don't, so I'm not. Why don't you go on a date with Mary Palm and her 5 sisters? I'm sure y'all have a great time.
You
I
were in
did.
a
I
house.
had the
I
education.
think for most of us, we're not exposed to it because our
Yeah.
parents kind of go through this reproductive,
Yeah, my
sterile
father and stepmother didn't
conversation.
care. They did not care.
Definitely don't talk about the emotional aspect,
Yeah.
right? And I did not lose my virginity by choice. So I think that threw me into something.
Mhm.
And I had been a tomboy my whole youth. So boys liking me was strange because I was like a tomboy. So I was like the friend. And it wasn't until
All of
high
a sudden,
school
they're looking at you differently.
they look at me different. All of a sudden, I got boobs. All of a sudden, I've got legs
Uh-huh.
for miles. We have these feelings. I have these feelings. And as a teenager, like, holy crap. I imagine every teenager doesn't escape without some level of trauma
Oh,
or lack of
absolutely.
information. But I definitely think we could do better as parents instead of just being like abstinence, abstinence. We have to have conversations.
I did have conversations with my kids. When they were teenagers, I was a doula and I was starting an apprenticeship and I had birth stuff all over the house. My children, every morning before they went to school, looked at a poster of dilation, Parental food
Yeah.
products.
Yeah.
They wouldn't eat a bagel for the longest time because they would look at that bagel and they'd be like, that's 10 centimeters. I can't eat that.
I
Like,
think that's an advantage I'll have raising my
Absolutely.
kids. I am in this birth space and we
Yeah.
had conversations because they're super curious about it.
They're going to
I've
be
got
better
to have some,
informed
yeah.
than any other young woman that they go to school. My kids were better informed. I remember my youngest, I think she was 13 or 14, ended up at a birth with me at Summerlin Hospital. Long story short, she saw the whole shebang, right down to the baby coming out. I remember her eyes were as big as those mirrors on the wall, like insane. I think that really had a lot to do with my kids not getting pregnant, because I can't tell you how many of their friends pregnant. And I remember my youngest, one of her friends from junior high school got pregnant, and she was like, "How stupid can you be? Do you not know how to practice safe sex? If there's anything you have drummed into my head is practice safe sex." And this is my youngest, if for no other reason, STIs. It was just a safety thing. So yeah, in our house, it was always very obviously because of what I do. But
Right.
when I was growing up, I was the complete opposite of you. They did not care. As long as I wasn't arrested, as long as I wasn't partially disemboweled in a hospital somewhere, they didn't care where I was.
But that made you feel away too.
Oh, yeah. I am quintessential Gen X, like, because we really don't care. Like, we don't care. And that's because most of us had parents. I'm sure our parents loved us, but we grew up in the, you're crying? Shut up or I'll give you something to cry about. It was a different generation. Not right, not wrong. Like, when we know better, we do better. But yeah, I think we all walk away from childhood and our teenage years with trauma. I think we have to. I think it's a rite of
It's
passage.
generational. It's actually generational.
It's
I
just the
think it's
way
been
we
passed
handle
down,
it.
right?
Yes. And here's what I like to tell my client: you are going to mess your kids up. You are going to. Just do it bigger, bolder, brighter, and more uniquely than your parents messed you up. That's all. Be different. Switch it up a little. Oh, but that's what, just a little bit. Listen, your kids are going to end up in therapy.
What I like about this, it's hard but picking up topics to choose about what's relevant. And I love that it shows that we felt inspired to cover reproductive health, and that led to the teen piece that we're doing next week. I really appreciate that piece. But I think for me, when it comes to resources, like we said last time, get involved in your community.
Oh yeah.
You have to be involved in your community and what's going on there, right? Because if a system isn't sustainable, if I have a baby and I can't afford to keep my job because childcare costs more than I get paid to work, or I can't take time off work because I don't have paid leave, or, just like a plethora of reasons when it comes to resource. If I don't have any of those things at my disposal, it could be as simple as someone couldn't get to the clinic because they didn't have a ride. And it's these simple things. I do think something has to happen at a federal level. We've got to protect people who are involved in that service and offering that humane service in a humane, dignified way, and allowing people to express the shame and guilt in safe spaces so they can heal, because they are going through something traumatic, even if it's deserved, even if it's a right they have access to. You still go through something that's happening to your body. You still felt that chemical change. You still felt those feelings and emotions. And so not only do we have to improve access, but we have to open safe spaces for those humans to be able to talk about these things, because then out of shame, we grow empowerment and decision-making and better parents and better future. I like that piece.
Yeah, I do too. I love that. I think that wrapped us up.
I think
I
that
think
was a
they
good
wrapped us
wrap-up.
up really good, talking about reproductive rights and how we can create safe space for one another. I love that. And next week, we're going to be talking about teenage pregnancy and diving into that
Absolutely. Yes.
access. And so I'm excited. I'm excited for it. So yeah,
That would
thank
be a
you.
cute shirt to say something like the naughty A word on the front. Access. Everyone's going to jump to abortion.
Yep. I like that. We should do that.
We should do that.
That's a good idea.
So we're opening up a screen for it now with a delivered heart at the bottom.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. I think that's cute.
And we're delivering mothers, midwives, and magic. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys. That was good.
Good job.